So we're here with Mark Winston Griffith, who was running against Al Vann, who has been in elective office in Bed-Stuy for 35 years. And in some ways, I guess this is considered an historic challenge. Why don't you tell us why you're doing this and whether you do consider this historic, this path that you're on?
Well, it definitely is historic. I mean, there's been no race like this in my memory. That is, you have a Democrat who's duly elected, who is running on the Democratic ticket in the general election, who's being challenged by someone on a third party ticket who actually is giving him a run for his money. Al Vann has never really had any true competition in the 35 years that he's been in office. So I think indeed this is historic. I'm running now in the general election because we came just a few hundred votes shy of beating him in September. And 70% of the people voted for change. And so I'm trying to align myself with the 70% of the voters out there who really believe that, Al Vann, while, he's done some great things in the past, really has not been engaged, has not been effective, has not really been championing the causes that we need him to champion over the last few years. And so, he is an incumbent and he is somewhat of a legend in this neighborhood, but it's a recognition that we need someone who's going to be present right now to tackle some of the most important issues.
Can you say something about how this, in a personal way, has affected you running against an incumbent who I assume is powerful in ways that perhaps would make many cautious, and how you think it's affecting Al Vann in a personal way?
It's a great question. I mean, I have to say, as I've told others, when I graduated from college in 1985, I wanted nothing other than to work for Al Vann because I thought that he was one of the most progressive figures on the scene. And while I wasn't given the opportunity to work for him back then, I have since, had a lot of respect in him. I believe that he's a legend. I believe that he's done a lot for this community. So again, it was never my intention to run against him. But the more I went out and I talked to people, and I realized the sense of abandonment and the sense that, that he's kind of already retired, that he retired on the job. Um, there's a more of a sense of urgency on my part, and I don't think of this as me going after Al Vann. That is, I've got nothing against him personally whatsoever. As for him, I couldn't tell you how it's affecting him personally. I know that he feels a little stung by the critique because he's not used to being criticized. He's not used to being held accountable, quite honestly, for what he's done. He's been used to being in office for all these years and people giving him a free pass every time he goes into office. And so he's never really had to endure this level of scrutiny.
Do you at this point consider the race to be uphill, or do you think there are signs that you're considerably ahead? Polls, as far as I know, have not been done.
Right.
But what is your sense? What is your feel for what's likely to happen on Tuesday?
What's likely to happen is I don't. Well, let me say that it's an uphill battle. Two things we're up against. One is the fact that again we're up against a 35-year incumbent voters whose name that voters know. And at the end of the day, that is what's most important. Not necessarily what a person has done, but just the fact that you know that they exist and you recognize their name. So that's the first hurdle we're up against. The second one, and probably the more difficult one, is the fact that Al Vann is on the Democratic ticket. And this neighborhood is a very dedicated, stubborn, if you will, supporters of the Democratic ticket. And people have told me time and time again that when they go into the voting booth, they don't even necessarily look at the names. They just go to the Democratic ticket and they just vote, straight down the line. So that's what we're up against. We're really against the habitual and sort of culturally ingrained sense of duty that people feel to voting for the Democratic ticket. We have to literally go door to door, person to person, to educate them. One, to give them sort of political license to vote for someone else who's not on the Democratic ticket, and let them know that the Working Families Party is a legitimate party. Let them know that I'm on row E, and that all the other people who are running alongside with me on the Working Families Party, Billy Thompson, Bill de Blasio, John Liu, Marty Markowitz, all of these people are registered Democrats like I am. All of them are running on the Democratic Party ticket, but they're also running on the Working Families Party ticket. So that tells you that the two have very much in line with one another. And if you were to go to the Working Families Party line and vote for it straight across, you essentially would be voting for every single person who's on the Democratic ticket except for Al Vann. So yes, it's going to be difficult. If we do win, it's going to be, I think, by a few hundred votes, quite honestly. I think it's going to be very close.
That concludes the interview with Mark Winston Griffith.